Hello, women's sport historians. I hope that you had a first good week of online classes and things are going well. I hope you're finding good ways to enjoy the weather or the people that you are with during this time of quarantine. Um, and I hope that you're, finding ways to connect with one another outside of um, the time that you're spending on class work and whatnot. This week we have women leaders in sport, and I sometimes forget. This is a newer text. I've only used it a couple of class semesters now. I sometimes forget that this chapters 12 and 13 that I had you read for this week are not really my favorites. I have to say I don't necessarily love how they cover this topic, but it is important. It is still important to talk about and highlight the movement of women working in sport and how participation in sport influences how women work in the professional world in general. So what I'd like to share with you this week are women leaders I admire in sport. As a treat to you, my lecture this week is going to be rather short. The PowerPoint is going to be rather short. I'm just going to highlight a few things that not only I talk about here, but the book talks about, and a couple of other aspects I think are important when it comes to this topic. But then I'm going to share with you some online videos for you to enjoy of women leaders in sport, and I would like to see the same from you. So at the end of this lecture video, I'm going to share with you your assignment for the week, and then you'll see what you have to do for the week. It'll be kind of fun, a little more interactive with me as we roll into starting with the Olympic topic next week. So, just as it's important to talk about the stories of women playing and achieving in sport, it's important to share the stories of this situation and the experiences of women leaders in sport, working in sport professionally. Um, I first want to just talk a little bit about the influence of sport on female executives working in the non sporting environment or industries, as well as then talk about gendered hiring in professional sport, and also talk a little bit about college level, not so much about high school level of sport right today. But um, uh, let's see, I do want to share some experiences of women working in the sport industry and strategies for advancing women in sport into leadership ranks, both professionally, internationally, collegiately, because I think it's important that we continue to talk about how women's voice at the table is important. It certainly is a big part of um, our sporting world is women participating in sport. So women having some decision making power around those experiences is important. We have to have that voice at the table. It's really critical. So first off, I just want to acknowledge, pretty much all of you have played sports at one time or another, and I want you to think about like when you played sports, how often people would say to you like, "What do you gain from sport? What's the value of sport?" And how often we seek what those values are that we gain in our personal pursuit of achievement in sport, like our our personal pursuit in greatness in an athletic endeavor. We're always talking about what are the other things that you gain from that. And so we know that research has shown that sport has influenced women in their future professional work. Women at the executive level of business and the industry of like the work industry have participated in a university level sport more frequently than women who work at the level of like a managerial position. So typically women who are at the managerial position, about 30% of that, I'm sorry, about 40% of that workforce has played at the collegiate level, while 55% of the women that work at an executive level have played a collegiate sport. There's something to be said about those numbers, right? We're talking about the women who advanced higher up tend to be women who have been collegiate athletes. And obviously, certainly with 45% of them that have not, it doesn't mean that if you're a college athlete, you're going to elevate up to the highest level, nor does it mean that it takes being a college athlete, a former college athlete, to elevate up. But the point is that when you only have about 40% of your workforce at the managerial level that has played, but a higher percentage at your higher level, that a lot of times that means that experience does help women achieve a higher level of achievement. Additionally, a study about 5 years ago there was a study done of like 400 female executives from 5 different countries, and there was clearly like wide agreement that sport background actually does help um, in terms of you being viewed favorably by employers, and about 75% or three-quarters of the respondents expressed a belief that sport participation had the potential to accelerate a woman's career more quickly. And over 60% of those respondents thought that sport involvement contributed positively to their career success, or to career success in general. So there's definitely some benefits of being an athlete for as long as you can, in terms of how it can impact you and your professional pursuits. As we have researched women in the workplace and how sports have influenced women in their professionally, there's also been quite a bit of research done in the hiring practices of the professional ranks and at the college level, but particularly the professional ranks in the big four: NBA, MLB, NFL, and NHL. That the Tides Institute out of the University of Southern Florida by Richard Lapchick, he every year does an annual report, a report card on those big four and their gendered diversity hiring practices. And it's probably not surprising that the WNBA performs the best out of all professional leagues, but when you look at the big four, not any of them perform much higher than a C grade. Sometimes, and more recently, the NBA has actually achieved a B range grade, but in terms of the gender diversity practicing hiring practices, most of them are at the C range or even lower: the NFL, the MLB, and the NHL. Um, but here's the deal: what we still see, what we're dealing with women, is the heteronormative, homologous reproduction of hiring. It's still a good old boys' network. Men certainly do protect their interests to exclude women, and that's just the fact of the matter. We see tokenism happening where women are hired in sort of limited numbers to sort of show or to create an appearance that there's change being made, but the system really hasn't changed. We still marginalize women and create gender division of labor in the sport world. And we can still look at, when we look at where women work within the sport arena, they are usually tracked into lower level positions and not often looked at for advancement in the workforce. So, when we're talking about working in sports, and so we still see these things happening very regularly. They perpetuate, sort of year after year. And in a survey that was done in women in sports and events survey, nearly 70% of the respondents said that there's a double standard for women in the sport industry, and it results in women having to work twice as hard and receiving half the credit. And that is pretty consistent and pretty true with the women I know that work in the sport industry. It is not true across the board, and of course, when you're only talking about 70% of the respondents, or not only, but when you're talking about 70% of the respondents, that means 30% don't feel that way, that there isn't a double standard. And certainly there are places where women do work in sports where the double standard has been eliminated and it doesn't exist. But we're talking about a good proportion of the experiences that women that work in sports do have, see a double standard and feel like advancement is so much harder. They have to work twice as hard for half the amount of credit, and of course get paid less amongst that. They also indicate that the glass ceiling that have prevented that the glass ceiling is real, and it has prevented a lot of women from upper management positions. About 72% of the respondents said that. So certainly, we have a long way to go in terms of creating a little bit more equitable treatment and how women can advance in the workplace when it comes to working in the sport industry. Even into the college ranks, right? Among head coaching positions, women only make up about 20% of the workforce. They only make up 40% of the head coaches of women's teams, which you already know that from when we talked about Title IX. And 98% of men's teams are coached by men. So why men get to have double the opportunity to coach programs and women don't is just literally beyond me. Of course, I think as more women get into professional sport coaching that we are starting to see with the NBA and the NFL and the MLB, we're going to start to see that trickle down effect happening, and we'll probably start seeing more women coaching men's teams in the college level as well. Um, Only about 3% of athletic director of the NCAA FBS schools are women, and slightly only above 20% of all college and university athletic directors are females. So again, a long way to go. It just is there's still sort of this stereotype that athletic directors are men, and even more so white men, right? I mean, that's just kind of been the stereotype of what an athletic director is at the college level and at the high school level as well. Um, Also, some other just statistics: over a third of head athletic trainer positions are held by women. Less than 10% of head sport information director positions are women. About 5 or 6 years ago, last time the census was taken, nearly 10% of all departments nationwide had no women on their administrative structure. That means no women in the AD, assistant, associate AD level were women. 10%, that's a lot. That's a pretty big number. Because I mean every department should have a female on staff again, and their administrative staff again, because you need a voice at the table. If half your athletes in your institution are women, it would be good to have someone reflecting that voice that's making policy decisions, administrative decisions. But it's interesting because while the NCAA requires a senior woman administrator, who should be an administrator that has a voice and a say in some of the administrative decisions being made, the NCAA, who instituted the SWA position, the NCAA itself, at the higher level of importance governance structures, has not a single. Um, I'm sorry, it doesn't. It's not that it is a single woman, but the higher the governance structure and more important the position, the lower percentage of women they have in those leadership roles. So even at the NCAA, there are fewer women as you go higher into the level of administrative importance than there are at the lower levels. So what women are continuing to deal with when they work in sports is hiring issues, right? The equitable opportunities to get hired in positions, the wage gap that is very clear that exists in every level of sport, adverse stereotypes, conflicts between work and home. I mean, that seems to be more prevalent for women than it is for men. In group favoritism, that's something that holds women back, or that is a stumbling block for women. Lack of inclusive climate for women, and certainly with that, sexual minorities and self-limiting behaviors. I mean, we limit ourselves as women. We don't think we're capable. We don't think we're meant to be in that realm, or if we do, we think we're only able to do and are limited to a certain extent of what we can do and can contribute. So we are starting to gain um, recognition in the athletic front and what our athletic capabilities are and what we're able to do as women athletically. And now we need to start making room for women who work in sport and celebrating those women who are doing good things in sport and are paving the way for other women to work in sport. The Katie Sowers of the world, the Billie Jean Kings of the world, the Christine Brennans of the world. We need to celebrate what these women are doing and highlight them and make it known to little girls everywhere. If they want to work in sport and be successful, they can too. So, what I'd like to share with you this week are women leaders that I admire in sport. Because my lecture is a little shorter, I did this intentionally so that you could watch these videos that I have posted for you on women I admire. Now, I did this in kind of two groups. I did two individuals in sport, and then I did two organizations in sport. and hopefully they'll be fun for you to watch. But what I want you to do is I want you to watch those videos in addition to having watched this lecture. And then your assignment is to research and find women leaders in sport online. This could be like one of the goats from your assignment that you did earlier this semester. If there's no other thing, if there's no one else that you find or want to research and look more into, because you were so enamored and impressed by that woman, that could be your person, your leader in sport. Or it could be anything with coaches, from coaches to administrators to front office workers in professional leagues, whatever you find. Any kind of sport personality that you want to identify that's a female leader. And then you're going to pick one to share with me as your selection. And you can either send it to me via my cell phone, which all of you have, right? Or you can tag me on social media. Can you see this? This is my Instagram right here, and this is my Twitter. Twitter, they're the same. Sayjpaints, SAYJPAINTS. Twitter, my name is Sarah J. On Twitter. So you can tag me on social media, or you can text it to me, and then we're going to interact on that platform. I'm going to ask you some questions or just give you some responses back and forth on that platform. So if you tag me on Instagram, we'll communicate back and forth on that platform. If you tag me on Twitter, same thing. But this will be kind of a way for us to interact this week about this topic. I think it'll be way more interesting than going into more depth on the chapters. And I'm also looking forward to seeing who you find out there that are women leaders in sport and why you think they're important. Don't forget about broadcasters, journalists. I mean, one of my women is a journalist, so you're going to see that on the little page. But don't forget about just kind of any avenue of sport, aspect of sport that you can think of. Trainers, medical doctors that work with sport teams, etc. There's a lot out there. So do a little bit of research, find some women that are intriguing to you, leaders in sport, send it to me. Text it to me. Text me a little video or a little clip or an article or something on my phone, or like I said, tag me on social media and we'll communicate and interact that way a little bit. I'm really looking forward to what you find here. I'm excited to see who you uphold as a female leader in sport, and it will be a great lead into all the things women have done to pursue and push sport forward through the Olympic Games, which we're going to start covering next week. Have a great week, everybody. Look forward to hearing from you and communicating with you one-on-one or individually this week. Should be a great time. Oh, let's get this done by the end of the weekend, by the way. So try to do it try to do it sometime between, Tuesday this week and through the end of the week. Have a great week, everyone. Talk to you later. Peace.